In the first lesson, we discussed the importance of getting to know the individuals that we are assisting in finding jobs. We can't do job development successfully until we have a good idea of what the person wants to do as well as the individual's skills. We are going to talk in this lecture about the process of job matching and how it plays a very important role in long-term job retention. So what is a good job match? A job match is the comparison of the individual's skills, interests, and preferences and the performance requirements of a job. When employment specialists or job developers are working in this field for a long time and they get to know their job seekers, they may be able to observe a job and quickly determine if the person and the job are a good fit. Typically, job analysis and job matching take time and patience and requires careful and multiple observations of the workplace and the job. This analysis will also identify the mismatches between the individual's current skill level and the position. If these mismatches are minimal, we can determine how to compensate for differences between the individual skills and the requirements of the job. We will be talking about this more in a few minutes. A match between the individual and the job includes more than simply deciding if the person has the skills to do this particular position. As I have mentioned, we need to also determine if the person is interested or receptive to taking a job in this workplace. A person may be willing to take a job if the characteristics of the work environment and the coworkers match what the individual is looking for rather than the actual job duties. In other words, successful employment also may depend as much on the match between people and their work environments as on the individual's personal characteristics. I remember two young women with very similar interests and skills. They accepted jobs in a large hotel's laundry where one person worked in the morning and the other in the afternoon. They had equal ability and learned the job duties to the production standards of the position. However, one fit better in the laundry because she was very social and enjoyed interacting with her coworkers at break. While she had very limited language and talked in phrases rather than sentences, she smiled and laughed with the coworkers as they discussed dating, clothes, music, and social activities. The other young woman, who also had a significant disability but had significantly better verbal skills, did not fit as well in the environment. She preferred to sit alone during breaks and was not interested in talking about dating, music, and social activities. Eventually, this young woman moved to another job where the coworkers were older women, and she fit in there much better than in the first workplace. So there is more to matching a person to a job than just considering if the individual has the skills to perform or learn the job duties. I don't know if you have ever heard yourself saying any of the statements that are on this slide to a coworker, a parent, or a job seeker with a disability. Take a moment to read them with me. Let's think about what might happen if you move forward with job placement if these situations occur. I found a job today at Big Bob's Burgers. Who's in the referral pool? Hurry before someone else takes the job. I know that Sally lives 45 miles away from the factory, but it's a big company. I'll just drive her until I find her a ride with a coworker. I know that you don't want this job, but it's a good entry-level job. We'll look for something else down the road once you have some experience. All of these are common job matching mistakes that have been made many times when accepting a job on behalf of a job seeker. Sometimes we get so excited when an employer has agreed to hire one of our job seekers that we forget to analyze the job requirements and determine if anyone matches the position. I know of many instances when an employment specialist accepted a job prior to the completion of a job analysis and observation of the specific job duties. Occasionally you might get lucky and have a person in your referral pool that fits the position. More often than not, the person who is placed quickly in a job with limited upfront work will fall out of the job quickly and end up with a history of poor job retention. By no fault of the individual, he or she may get the reputation of being difficult to place, when in reality we did not do a good job of matching the person to a job. So if you hear yourself saying to a job seeker, "I know that you don't want this job, but it's a good entry-level job," stop yourself. Consider the implications of putting someone into a job where there are barriers to success before the person even starts to work. A job analysis actually begins when the employment specialist starts the interview process with a potential employer. We have posted a business interview form for your information, which can be modified to meet the needs of your agency. During this initial interview, the goal is to obtain key pieces of information about the company and, if applicable, the specific job opening. Some information can be learned prior to the business interview by looking up the company online. Employers may be more receptive to working with your agency if they feel you have a genuine interest in their businesses. You want to leave the initial interview with a time to come back to the company and complete a job analysis if the employer is receptive to hiring one of your job seekers. Posted in this lesson is a sample job analysis form that you can use for the purpose of analyzing a workplace. You will want to interview coworkers and observe the employees that are assigned to the job duties that are being considered. I like to personally have the opportunity to work the job so I can get a sense of exactly what skills will be required. This is particularly true if I am attempting to place an individual with a significant disability, such as a significant intellectual disability. I can plan as I work the job how the job duties might be taught or modified to accommodate the person's support needs. The amount of time that is required to spend on the job site can vary from 1 hour to a full day. The complexity of the work environment as well as the individual's support needs will determine the amount of time and information that is needed. For instance, if the person is going to be working a limited number of job duties for a 4-hour time period, the employment specialist may be able to complete the analysis in less time. However, be sure that you spend enough time in the workplace to observe the interactions between coworkers and the supervisors, such as during breaks and lunch. More on this important topic will be covered later in this lecture. Some of the questions that I want answered involve the physical characteristics of the area where the person will be working. Where is the workstation? What are the noise level and the activity level in this area? Is this a small space, and what is the lighting like? All of these things can have an impact on a person's success. For instance, if the work area is very crowded and noisy, would the person that you are considering for this position be able to deal with the distractions? Or would you be setting the person up for failure if placed in this type of an environment? Again, the basic question that you need to answer is, do you have anyone whose skills and interests match this particular work environment? There are many things that you want to observe when considering a potential job for one of your job seekers, other than just the job duties that are to be performed. I'd like to make some comments about this for the next time that you complete a job analysis. Individuals with intellectual disabilities may never have been in settings where they are required to perform independently. This sometimes results in the person becoming prompt dependent on others to participate in activities or to work. People who are prompt dependent often get passed over for employment because professionals believe that they can never become independent. During your job analysis, you will need to consider how much coworker or supervisor interaction is available in the workplace, as well as if a potential job seeker's support needs can be met there. In other words, are natural supports available in this workplace? When observing the area where the individual is potentially going to work, ask yourself some of the following questions. Are there coworkers in this area, and for what percentage of the day? What is their proximity to the workstation? Do they interact with each other? When and how often? Do coworkers assist each other with work tasks? I also like to consider if there are natural patterns or a flow to the workday. When do breaks occur? Are routines and schedules followed? For instance, if coworkers are not in the immediate area, do coworkers pass by the person's workstation during specific times of the day? Can those times be used to provide prompts or feedback to the worker that will assist the individual in being successfully employed? You also want to determine if there are interruptions that may occur that will take the person off task. What are the physical demands of the position, such as endurance, strength, and motor skills? All of these items can be found on your job analysis worksheet that is included in this lesson. As you complete the job analysis, you will be comparing the characteristics of the job to the characteristics of the individual or individuals considering the position. Sometimes you will have a specific person in mind as you complete the analysis at the job site. At other times, you may go back to your agency and compare the individual's vocational profile information to the job analysis information. There are really no hard and fast rules as to how this process is completed. If I know the job seeker really well as I complete a job analysis, I may not need to have the actual form in front of me. This is a skill that will develop over time. It should be pointed out here that many individuals with significant barriers to employment will need individual-specific job development. What I mean by this is that you will need to know the individual well and actively seek employment specific to that person. As you work towards matching a person to a particular job opening, it is also important to consider if changes can be made or supports added that would facilitate employment for a specific person. Can accommodations be put into place, and is the employer receptive to making accommodations? Too often, people with significant disabilities are screened out of employment because an employment specialist could not envision an accommodation or support during the job analysis process. It is vital for the employment specialist to have a vision of how a job accommodation can impact the employability of an individual. There are many strategies that we can use to bridge the gap between a person's skills and the demands of the job. Most likely you are thinking of ways that this can be done as you listen to this lecture. We need to decide if the individual can be trained to complete the job duties within a reasonable time period. The person does not need to independently perform the job on the first day of work, but is there a reasonable expectation that the requirements are within the person's capabilities? In other words, you don't do anyone any favors if you try to fit someone into a job that is too demanding or does not match the person's areas of interest. Also consider if there are naturally occurring cues that will signal the person to work. For instance, in my office, I can judge the time of day as the sun moves in the sky and the light decreases through my window. Finally, can modifications be made to the task, including environmental modifications, material adaptations, compensatory strategies, or assistive technology so the person can be independent? I remember a young man with a traumatic brain injury who accepted a job at a veterinarian's office. If the vet needed him to assist with an animal, he could call the worker away from whatever task that he was working on. This confused the individual because he could not remember what he was doing once it was time to return to the task. A small notepad used as a compensatory strategy allowed him to write reminders to himself. This made the difference between success and failure in this particular work situation. We will talk more about making task modifications during the lesson on job site supports and training, but it is important to think about this as you complete the job analysis process. As you assist individuals with disabilities in finding jobs, you may find that some of them are more difficult to place in employment. This may be due to a number of factors. The person may have very specific skills and interests. The person may have limited or no work history, or the person may have a significant disability. Regardless of the reasons, the person may not be able to complete all the job duties associated with existing job descriptions. No matter how well you analyze the job, you may find that no one can fill the position as it is advertised. When this occurs, employment specialists may not know how to assist the individual with a significant disability in finding and maintaining employment. The term customized employment refers to finding a job that is specifically negotiated for an individual. The negotiation process results in a job that is designed both to meet an employer's needs and to capitalize on the strengths and preferences of the job seeker. We are not finding and filling existing job openings, rather working with an employer to restructure existing positions. Customized employment holds many short and long-term benefits that may not be initially obvious to the business. It is our job as employment specialists or job developers to assist employers in identifying some of these benefits. This can include increased efficiency, productivity, improvement in the organization of work tasks, efficient use of employee skills and abilities, as well as improved customer service. For instance, a job developer was looking for a receptionist position for a young woman in our referral pool. While interviewing the employer regarding the open receptionist position, the job developer discovered the real issue. The current receptionist was compiling sales binders for the sales staff. When she completed this task, she was pulled away from the reception area. The job developer proposed that the current receptionist could increase her productivity and perform her job more efficiently if another person were hired to compile the sales binders. This negotiation resulted in a new job description for another job seeker who was interested in a clerical position. This process has also been referred to as the hidden job market. One way to find hidden jobs is to ask the employer questions during the job analysis process. They may include the following questions as well as others that you develop. Do you have tasks that could be done more efficiently? Do you pay overtime for specific tasks? Do you use temporary services routinely? Are there tasks that just aren't getting done? Are there tasks that are taking employees away from their areas of expertise? Are there busy times of the day that you could use more help? Are there tasks that should be done more often? Employers most likely will not know what you are talking about if you refer to customized employment. It is more likely that employers will understand the term job restructuring. Employers often restructure jobs within their companies to make their businesses more productive. If you think about it, you may know of a situation in your agency where a job was restructured to meet the skills of a particular employee. So when we approach employers, it is most helpful to use the language that they are already familiar with. You need to find out what that language is in your area and incorporate it into your discussions with business. This has already been discussed in other lectures during this lesson, so please be sure to listen to those as well. Here's an example of how a hotel might restructure a housekeeper position. Let's assume for a moment that there is a housekeeper who has a language barrier and has some difficulty reading notes that customers may leave in their rooms. To deal with this situation, the hotel decides that instead of having one person to clean 10 rooms, that they would have 2 housekeepers work together, handling 20 rooms during the course of the day. With this solution, you have the opportunity to split up the task and have those 2 people job share the position and still maintain the quality of the job. That is the essence of job restructuring. It's looking at how to get the tasks that need to be completed done in a manner that better satisfies the needs of the employer. So how does one go about proposing job restructuring or customized employment to an employer? There are a number of ways that a job may be restructured. The terms that I use here are from Bissonnette's book and are cut and paste, fission, and identifying marginal tasks. Cut and paste involves cutting one or more tasks from one or more existing positions to create a job. Fission involves dividing the job duties from one job, resulting in the creation of 2 or more jobs. Finally, identifying marginal tasks involves asking employers if there are job duties that are not being done poorly, not frequently enough, or are not clearly anyone's responsibility. Identifying these job duties and combining them can result in a job that benefits the employer as well as the job seeker. During this process, you are helping employers to identify needs that they may not realize as yet or haven't come to the surface. While I am using the term create in our lesson, you may not get very far with employers if you talk to them about creating jobs. This can translate for them into increased expense to the business versus decreased expense. So I suggest that you use the word restructure when you are talking with employers. In closing, there has to be a match between what the individual is interested in and what the employer's needs are. I can't really say this enough, and perhaps it is the most important thing to consider when completing a job analysis. This is regardless of whether you are looking at an existing job description or working with an employer to customize a position for a specific individual. The second important consideration is what supports are available at this worksite, and do they meet the needs of the individual who will be placed there. This is a quality consideration that must guide the entire job analysis process. I've seen individuals placed in jobs where the support did not match the person. The end result is that the employment specialist could never fade from the individual. Ultimately, these workers with disabilities will lose their jobs. I'm not so sure that the issue is the person's disability as much as that we did not do a good job of matching the individual to a position. Please keep this in mind as you move forward. I can't promise that if you do a job analysis and match a person to the job based on the characteristics in the forms, that people will always be successful. However, the individual will have a better chance for successful job retention if we carefully match his or her skills and interests during this stage of facilitating employment.